Purple Line is a community podcast bringing you in-depth conversations with diverse leaders in the public and private sectors. Whether you're a student looking to gather advice or a professional tuning in for valuable resources, our dynamic programming provides inspiration and insights for all ages and backgrounds. I'm Marianne Gomez Orta, your host of the Purple Line podcast and the CEO of the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute. Welcome. All right. Hey, Carlos. Good to see you again.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us on the Chili Purple Line podcast.
Glad to be here.
And thank you for allowing us to be in your casa here at FIU DC.
Yeah.
So we're so excited to have this conversation. I'm really excited to have this conversation. So people need to know that the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute and Florida International University, especially the DC campus, have been partners. Well, I've been here at Chile 14 years, so at
all
least
of those
that
years,
and then
for sure.
some. So we want to take some time to get to know you, learn a little bit about FIU. Interesting, I had a conversation with someone else the other day about like how organizations are structured and how they're built and how they change. And I said, hey, wait a minute. There's always people behind that magic. So, and I think you're one of those magic persons at FIU. So tell us a little bit first about you.
Okay.
And then a little bit about this FIU DC campus.
So proud Miamian, born and raised in the 305. Son of Cuban parents. Very proud of my heritage. Very proud of my hometown. I went to FIU myself. I famously tell the story that I wanted to go to another university in another capital city.
We need to tell them that, yeah.
Okay, yeah, we won't mention the opposition, never do in politics. And my overprotective Cuban mother says, "Oh, mijo, why don't you start at FIU?
Yeah.
And after a year, you can transfer." Well, it's been
Wise woman.
29 years, and I've never transferred, and I'm still with FIU.
Well, you did kind of do like a little jump, right? You went from Miami to DC. So
well, exactly.
Yeah.
But after graduating, I worked on campus a few years. But in Miami, I also worked for 6 years in local education policy. I worked at the Miami-Dade School Board for one of our school board members and ultimately the school board chairman. And I got involved in a lot of local races there. So I did that for 6 years before coming to DC. Then up here, I worked at the National League of Cities. And then for all of the last 16 years, I've been working for FIU.
Whew, crazy. Okay, so why education? Well, what was the, was it a certain mentor, an advisor, or was that also your mom saying, mira, mijo, this is what you need to study? So, like, why education?
Well, mira, mijo was also a teacher. My mom was
that makes
lifelong
sense.
teacher, 40 years. So I grew up with her. But my father, an architect, grew up with that influence, both of design and serving others and education.
Very cool.
But early on, I also, got involved in politics, and the news and newspapers were always around us. So current events and what was happening. And in Miami, of course, the Cuban radio was always on.
Claro, yeah, of
because
course.
Can you believe that I was, at my earliest ages, very, very quiet and silent?
That's hilarious.
So my grandmother, in those first years, was worried. She thought I might be mute or,
Oh, like that silent?
Yeah, like that silent. So what did she do? She put me next to the radio and started blaring Cuban radio, which was all about politics and current events. So I'm sure that also has something to do with what seeped
It's all that subliminal communication, from your families. And it's just amazing, right? Because we always talk to students about, okay, so there's what you studied in school, there's your major, there's the decisions that you've made. But by the time you were born to that decision you made, there's been a lot of making of you, right? By your environment, your parents. That's really cool. So I guess that you also use some of your dad's architecture to like design this DC
ultimately,
FIU campus.
But I think design has also always been part of, what I've appreciated in cities and connections. But part of the other educational answer is seeing education at the system level. When I worked in the Miami-Dade schools, I think with all of its opportunities, but challenges, a large bureaucracy. But also from my earliest days at FIU. What kept me at FIU and still keeps me with FIU is from those days, and if you know the history of our university from the earliest years of our inception, but even as a freshman, what I realized about FIU is, it may not be 200 years old or 100 years old and steeped in all of these traditions and ivy walls, but what was cool about it as a student, and is still cool, is that it is a yes university. It
I
still
like
has
that.
maintained a startup
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
If you have a great idea and you can convince some people and think of a plan, let's give it a shot. And I think that's where we're still at today.
Well, not only that, but it's a public university, right? Which is really unique as well because so I'm from California, big, traditional California university systems. And it's really difficult to kind of be a public university and be at the same time innovative, get people involved in the community. I mean, we worked together for a while, so I know that, reaching out to the business people and saying, hey, what do you need? Because when our students graduate, we need you to give them jobs. And then the university, with your leadership as well, have brought them to the campus. So talk a little bit about how you've helped and how the university has done that. Because you're not just saying, oh, here's our curriculum,
Right.
right?
Well, I can go back. So my exposure to FIU begins in the mid to late 90s. And I think the evolution of them to today, to your point, is it starts locally. Locally, we have transformed ourselves into, a real anchor partner, a real solutions provider, whether it be on transportation issues, whether it be producing a lot of our public servants because of our
Right.
alums,
Right.
the business sector, our great schools, the hospitality sector, transportation challenges, environment. Issues cannot be tackled and solved in South Florida now without involving FIU and FIU's researchers. So that is cool because
Yeah.
I love cities and I love the transformation of regions, and that's what's also kept me here. But that's what's also given FIU its credibility, not only across the state because we're playing an important role in South Florida and the state realizes
Yeah.
that, but also nationally and internationally. And that I think gives us credibility and standing here on a lot of these national challenges, which is translating to where we're at today,
Yeah.
why I also love my job.
Cool. So we've had several conversations on, I know that we kind of meet, once or twice a year. We go, okay, what's going on at Chile? What's going on at FIU? And, I'm curious, what is your advice to college students now, right? I mean, when we went to school back in, before email, it was very different navigating how we got a job, navigating universities, the first one to go to college, all of those. So what's some of the advice that you give students now?
Well, a couple of points. Don't wait till you're graduating or that final year to start knocking on doors, getting to know
Right.
people. The first doors you can start knocking on are the faculty at any university.
Yeah.
And at FIU
Totally
for sure.
underutilized gems.
100%.
Always.
Because
Always.
these are amazing leaders in their own right that are tackling, economic issues, that are tackling environmental issues. Why not benefit from their sage advice?
Their wisdom.
The squeaky wheel gets the oil. Show up to meetings. Show up to, volunteer sessions. Show up to, presentations that may be on campus. Get to know these folks because that's going to be your entry point into other networks outside of the
Yeah.
university. So that's one. I do always, regardless of anyone's partisan stripes, I always, common recommendation to me is get involved in local campaigns
Okay.
because of the fact that government, is part of all of our lives in some way. And this is
Like it or not, that's
like
true.
it or not.
Yeah, yeah.
And even if you're a teacher or you're, a small business owner, I think it helps to understand how these different levels of government operate, but also how influence is built. And even just volunteering on any campaign,
Yeah.
the smaller the better.
Did you do that?
Of course, yeah.
Did you do some campaign work?
Yeah, local races, school board seats, and
Did the people win?
most of them have.
Okay.
Yeah, still to this day.
I'm just kind of like wondering. I get that from other people. Oh, you should be, on the campaign, the candidate. I'm like, did the guy win? Did the woman win?
But it's also great advice for people that are looking to start organizations because what are campaigns? First off, they're time limited.
Right.
So you never have all the time to plan the glorious strategy.
Right.
They're finance limited. So you never have all the money in the world that you want to
You
do
need to
with.
be resourceful.
So you need to be resourceful. It creates, I think it fosters creativity. You need volunteers. You need to convince friends to come join you for a couple hours on a Saturday. It's the reality of how these races are won. You need cash. You need to knock on a number of doors. or a lot of doors. So it's these you fine-tuned communications.
Oh, that's a good point.
You could be
Right, the
knocking on doors.
messaging,
Exactly.
all of that.
Because it's after, knocking
And
on.
it's a certain grit and hustle, right? To
Of
be able,
course.
and you meet all these different people. So do you still have friends now from working on
Oh yeah,
campaigns?
of course. Some of the best
Yeah.
friendships, and I think it's a good reminder as much whenever someone says they've had campaign experience,
Right.
that actually kind of bumps them up.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's a
win or lose,
right.
because and then you
Yeah.
start to ask them, well, what did you do in a campaign, and what was your role?
So do you have a third tip for the students?
Third tip: show up on time.
That's one of my favorites.
Major one.
One of my favorites. I always say show up early.
Show up early,
Yeah.
because if you're on time, you're late.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Totally.
That's big, because a major deal breaker and major
Right.
turn off. So
Right.
that's that. Do your homework. Volunteer.
Okay, so what does do your homework mean? Because I think sometimes with some students, they're like, okay, that makes sense, and then they put on like, well, are you gonna give me the homework to do? Because that's kind of what they're used to in school. So what does that mean?
Well, let's say you
Unpack
get.
that a little bit
Let's
for
bring
students.
it to the DC ecosystem. You're going to
Okay.
be invited to a reception, to a
Right.
chili reception, or it's going to be hosted at Amazon, policy shop, wherever you're going, whatever you're going to be doing in the next few days. Take an extra few minutes and research what this member of Congress, what their history is, what
Right.
committees they serve on. Because sometimes it's only 30 seconds you have to leave a good impression. And the fact that you're interacting with a team member, from that company organization, and you've taken the step to understand a little bit more of the context of what they're dealing with, I think that's important.
Right. Yeah.
So always prepare. I always tell a vignette from a book by Thomas Friedman that also make sure you're always doing your best effort. You're putting, is this the best work you can produce?
Yeah, I tell students, is this the A work or are you sending me C work to review? Because
Exactly.
we only want to review A work.
Friedman would always reference the Renaissance artists that have different versions of their paintings, and their masterpieces weren't their masterpieces until 6, 7, 10 versions in.
Wow,
when
that's
they would
true.
actually sign it with their signature, and that was their complete product. So is the memo you're writing, is the email you're sending your best work? So
Very cool.
tough question to answer sometimes.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think that sometimes, what we think of giving students advice seems like easy to us because either someone gave us that advice, it helped us, but then every generation is different, right? So when we start to pass that on and you get this kind of glare look like, I guess I need to unpack this a little bit more for you, or like explain this a little bit more. So I think, and then also to your point, in Washington, D.C., and not just in D.C., but I think in certain environments that when you're looking for a job, you're trying to make those connections. We tell our interns that are here with the Global Leaders Internship Program, it's a 15-week job interview because
Yep.
every day, you never know. You never know
Exactly.
what that interaction is.
And since you've mentioned it, I know to put the spotlight back on Chile, I want to thank the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute. You all have transformed hundreds and hundreds of lives, and I know many of our FIU students first got their start. So once again, every opportunity I'd like to thank
thank
your
you.
board and you,
Thank you.
for really taking things to the
Well, you
next
send
level.
us great students, so hey, that's awesome. Another question for you regarding Florida International Universities. Okay, it's maybe not as many years as other universities, but can you please share with the audience a little bit about the Hispanic serving institutions and FIU's growth in that arena?
Well, FIU's growth and FIU's standing is very much a Miami story. Once again, it goes back to our hometown. Miami's just this amazing fabric of diversity that, it's not only enough to say Hispanic, Black, and Anglo communities. Within each of those buckets, and the Asian community as well, it's such an amazing diversity of all, shades of Hispanics and
Right.
Blacks from the Caribbean and the South and all over the world. So all within one region. So that's an exciting element that FIU, it's part of our DNA. Miami is very much an immigrant entry point. If you're not directly first generation, you're probably second or third, and traditions hold true, and these are roots that we are very proud of. So at scale, FIU is very large. We're proud to be just a little over 54,000 students.
And how many like campuses?
Main campus is two, and many other centers throughout South Florida, as well as here in DC, of course. But in that diversity brings amazing strength because we're able to. These are top engineers, top scientists that yes are diverse and are able to, as Chile also likes to take pride in, it's giving a diversity of thought and tackling solutions from different ways.
Yeah, and then you've also been able to, I guess part of it's because the magic of South Florida, you're also able to recruit some phenomenal faculty from around the world.
Did you mean the weather of South Florida? Yeah. The amazing weather of South Florida? That's part of it too.
Yeah. I love that for sure.
But actually on that, connecting back to the university, and we're joking about it, but when you look at the strengths of the university, whether it be environmental resilience, chronic diseases that our researchers are tackling in population health, Latin America and the Caribbean, the future of tech talent, for all of those reasons, Miami is the perfect lab to be tackling these, and it presents all of the opportunities. It's addressing all of the challenges, whether it be challenges facing the environment or health-wise, and it's the perfect lab.
Yeah, it is.
So it's another reason why.
Yeah, it's a perfect lab, and at the same time, it's also, to your point, like the gateway, to Central and South America, the Western Hemisphere, and I love the fact that there are students from all over the place, right? Whether it's all the United States, it's not just like a Miami campus, right? There's students that come in from all different walks of life and different universities, and faculty that I've had a chance to meet as well, who have kind of grown up in South Florida, or like in any place else. You do a great job of recruiting from other places. Before we wrap up, anything else that you'd like to share with the audience about FIU or yourself, something that we don't know already from looking up on some website?
Well, we're excited where the university's at today. We've been focused on our home campus, but what we continue to strive for here in Washington is transplanting that top talent, whether it be our students within a semester, thanks to opportunities with Chile and other internship hosts, whether it be our faculty. On any given week, we have faculty, this week as an example, hosting a major environment forum here.
Oh, yeah, cool.
We have our law faculty in town at conferences. Engaging with our federal partners, our members of Congress that have been, much of our success on the research side, and we're a research university. So currently we're producing over $330 million in annual research expenditures. That obviously comes from the federal government, but that increase wouldn't be there without the strong support of the Florida delegation, both sides of the aisle, both chambers, over the last few decades, but in particular in the last 5 or 10 years. So you bring all of those elements together and you bring amazing students, and I think our future in the next 5 years is unleashing our students even in greater ways to be leading our initiatives here, be hosting their own national conferences, not only getting the internships and jobs, but helping drive the university's future. And we're excited about that.
Okay, so that means like in another 3 or so years, you're going to move into a much bigger space here,
bigger
we'll campus in Washington. So last
being very measured on our growth.
Oh, yeah. Last two questions is, one is, what was your favorite class undergrad?
Let's see. Believe it or not, I have two answers. Can I?
I guess.
Miami politics for sure.
There was a class in Miami politics?
Yeah, in Miami.
Of course. My gosh.
Just because of the nuances.
It wasn't just politics. It was Miami politics.
Yeah, it was the influence of Miami politics.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Once again and actually the, a course on the Everglades.
Oh, yeah.
And although, back to my mom, who's an amazing teacher and was awarded an award once by the National Park Service because she would take her students.
Okay, let's do a proper shout out to Mom. What's her full name? And
Olga Hernandez.
All right, very good.
And Caesar Becerra, my dad too.
All right.
But the Everglades, by the time I reached FI, so she would take her students there every year for their exposure. These were elementary school students. So we grew up with the Everglades because it is Miami. It's part of our ecosystem. But the course at FIU, I remember, was able to understand how the Everglades roll in the larger Florida ecosystem and how it's one of a kind in the world.
In the world.
So transport myself to where I'm at today. Here we are in Washington, one of our major research initiatives and themes is the work that FIU is doing for the Everglades. So it's
Oh,
one
you're
of those,
making your mom so proud.
one of those full circle
Yeah, that's
moments.
awesome.
But and
I love
the
it.
Everglades is also about politics too.
Oh, there's a lot.
And I hate to say this, but
And it's a global kind of politics as
yeah,
well in
but
regards to the
it
Everglades.
is one of the unsung political success stories because local, state, federal, Republican, Democrat, everyone
Right.
is supportive and is doing what they can, and we're also living in a moment now where you have record investments from the federal government, from the state government, up just approximately about $1 billion a year
Wow.
towards Everglades restoration, which should be the topic of a future podcast.
Oh my
'cause
gosh. Okay. All right. My last question is, what's your favorite thing to do in Washington or a place to visit in Washington?
Definitely any one of the museums.
Okay.
Or on beautiful, nicer days, as we're starting to experience, go biking, on the weekend and
Very cool.
through many of our paths that are out there.
All right. Well, Carlos, again, thank you so much for joining us on the Chile Purple Line podcast. Very much appreciate you and FIU. Thanks again, and I'll see you in Washington.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Purple Line. Follow us on social media at The Chile, at THECHLI. Thank you for joining us on The Purple Line.